is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. All right, so here's the situation we have for you guys right here. We actually have quite a lot to talk to you about as we have more data and a lot more models that have come in with this big snow system that's going to be impacting a lot of the United States throughout this weekend. We're also seeing the NWS release their initial estimates for their snow and ice totals, so we're going to be talking about that as well. So we're just going to go ahead and dive right into it, and let's just go ahead and get started with the latest models because we have a lot that we need to cover. Here is the GFS for you right here. We're going to use the GFS. We're also going to use the NAM and a couple other models as well, just to kind of give you a big picture of what we may be looking at right here. So let's go ahead and start with the GFS, more so for the long-range forecast, and then the NAM for at least the initialization and kind of how this is going to start off, because there are some differences that I am a little skeptical with both the NAM and the Euro. So let's go ahead and get into those right now. So let's go ahead and get started. We have the GFS right here. You do have a low-pressure system expected to develop in the next couple of days on the lee of the Rocky Mountains over here in Colorado and New Mexico. And by Thursday night, we're going to start seeing some precipitation and convection starting to organize across much of the deep south over here. In the meantime, you have this very big and very powerful high pressure system, 1055 millibars. That is extremely powerful for a high pressure system, and it is expected to be moving into the Midwest. And this high pressure system is expected to keep it further to the south, and that is why if you're in Tennessee, if you're in North Carolina, Oklahoma, Arkansas, you're looking at potentially well over a foot of snow because of that high pressure system blocking the system from moving further up to the north. So let's go ahead and move on right here. You start seeing a lot of snow and wintry mix starting to organize and develop by Friday afternoon. Really starts to ramp up by Friday evening, especially along Kansas, Oklahoma, and even into Texas, DFW, seeing potentially a lot of sleet and freezing rain as well. We're going to want to pay very close attention to this. Then by Saturday around midnight Central, 1 a.m. Eastern, you have a lot of snowfall from pretty much New Mexico all the way to Virginia because of this system right here. And this system also is going to be tapping into this significant Gulf moisture that's going to be moving further up to the north because of proximity. And that's really going to crank up those snow, freezing rain, and even rain totals for those in the warm sector right there. Because of the close proximity to the Gulf over there, you're going to start seeing a lot more moisture get infused into this system right here. And then as we get to Saturday morning, the snow starts to move out of Oklahoma and Kansas and then further into Arkansas, Tennessee as well. So we're going to want to pay attention to that as well. But look at this. Much of Texas by Saturday afternoon, much of the deep south is seeing sleet and freezing rain. This is going to be a potentially very catastrophic scenario that's going to be unfolding with this right here. And the reason I say it's catastrophic is because you have so much freezing rain, you have so much ice that really starts to impact a lot of the deep south. And this is going to just impact a lot of areas that are not used to these kind of winter weather impacts, like Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, the Atlanta area in Georgia, all of South Carolina, the southern half of North Carolina is when they're going to start seeing freezing rain potential with this. Even the extreme southern part of Tennessee is going to see a lot of freezing rain with this. So we're going to want to take this very seriously. So this is going to be kind of a jack of all trades and a worst case scenario moving through right here. And then as we get to Sunday night, the big stuff starts to push across parts of the Midwest. We're seeing a bit more of impacts potential for parts of the Midwest, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, before the system starts to move into the Mid-Atlantic, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, the big five cities, D.C., Baltimore, Philly, New York, Boston. You're going to want to take this super seriously because all the models have shifted further up to the north and have really ramped up your impacts over there. So this is going to be a worst case scenario. You're going to have the system get pushed down into the deep south where they're not used to these wintry conditions and then get yanked up to the north because of the end of that trough and really impact all the big 5 cities on the East Coast. The entire East Coast needs to be watching this very, very closely right here, because if you're not going to get snow, you're going to get wintry mix, and you're especially going to get freezing rain with this, and you're going to want to take this super seriously as this system moves. And this is Sunday night going into Monday. The storm does start to exit the region by Monday morning, kind of lingering until Monday afternoon, and that's kind of our situation we have going into Monday night. So this is going to be, at least for 3 days here, going to be a very crazy scenario that we're going to be watching all across here. We're going to continue to keep you updated as more data comes in, and we might be live streaming some of this as well, just because of how crazy this scenario is looking like. We'll give you an update on whether we do that or not. However, we do also need to look at another run right here. I do want to pull the NAM up because we do have that further out, and I am going to start talking about this as well since it's more of a mid-range run. But I'm also going to be pulling this up because I am skeptical with some of these models shifting too far to the north, and the NAM is an example of this, the European as well. So let's go ahead and pull up the NAM. System starts to get its act together around Thursday night going into Friday. Really brings snowfall across much of the Great Plains, especially into Oklahoma, but it really brings up the freezing rain totals across much of Texas, Arkansas. The GFS and the NAM's kind of difference is instead of snow for a lot of the deep south, you're going to start seeing a lot of freezing rain and sleet, which I would argue with the way the NAM is producing this, that would honestly be worse for a lot of the deep south, because yes, a foot of snow is bad, but it's drivable. You cannot drive in ice to save yourself. Ice has no friction, and this would arguably be a worse impact for a lot of people in the deep south that could potentially see, instead of 6 to 12 inches of snow, you could see a half inch of ice out of this. But I will say I am a bit skeptical about this whole setup right here. And the reason I am skeptical about this is the NAM is forecasting this high pressure system to be much weaker than the GFS, but at the same time, it's further up. At the same time, it's pushing into the United States, and even with a weaker high pressure system, like it's an 8 millibar difference, that's a pretty significant difference. You still have a very strong high pressure system around 1047 millibars. That would still push a lot of these impacts further to the south. It would push a lot of the snow further to the south, because at this point, the low pressure system would have nowhere to go. It can't just slug through and crash into a high pressure system. That's not how meteorological dynamics work. So I am skeptical of the NAM just because of the placement of the high pressure system and the impacts it has right here. And even if it is weaker than what the GFS is forecasting, you're still you're still going to see this get pushed further to the south, and worse snow, instead of impacting Kentucky and Tennessee and Arkansas, would push it towards Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, Ohio, going into the mid-Atlantic region. Yeah, I do not buy this particularly right now because, number one, the high pressure system that the GFS and European are forecasting are much stronger. And two, because of that, and because of that placement, I don't like the overall dynamics the NAM has placed with it. So I just wanted to point that out right here, just to kind of give you some context and give you an idea of what I'm thinking and why I think it's still going to be a southward storm and then you get yanked up to the north. That being said, though, snow accumulations are still going to be very significant, and these are the early returns for the NAM, but still, well over a foot of snow is expected, according to the NAM, in parts of Oklahoma and the Texas Panhandle, although because it pushes that snow further up to the north, now you're going to see potentially worse impacts for areas like Springfield, Kansas City, St. Louis, Springfield, Illinois, Indianapolis, Columbus, and maybe even as far north as Detroit could see some snow if this trajectory continues. But I do not think that the NAM is going to be this, at least the system is going to be this far to the north. I think the NAM is quite a ways too far to the north, in my opinion. But we'll have to see how things pan out. So that's what we have for your early returns for the NAM. We'll go ahead and show you the European as well. The European is also a bit further up to the north. It's not as egregious as the NAM is by a long shot, in my opinion, by a long shot right here, but it is still noteworthy right here, and I do think it is a little bit too far up to the north, particularly across the Midwest. Instead of maybe like 3 to 5 inches of snow for parts of of southern Illinois, you're looking at 6 to 10 inches of snow across the entire state. Same with Indiana and Ohio, with the worst of the snow being in the Ohio River Valley. I think because of that placement of the high pressure system, that's going to be yet pushed further down to the south, at least in terms of what we're seeing with the snowstorm initially. But then, as that trough starts to get more defined right there, and the kind of the low pressure system starts to move up to the north, it will then crash into much of the mid-Atlantic. Mid-Atlantic impacts I don't particularly have too big of an issue with. I think those are decently well placed, maybe a little bit further to the south in North Carolina and Tennessee, especially along the Appalachian Mountains where it's colder, would be a bit better. But I'm not particularly that upset about the Mid-Atlantic, at least according to the Euro. I'm mainly skeptical about the placement of what's going on in the upper south and the Midwest getting the bulk of the snow. I think that would likely get shifted probably maybe like 50 to 100 miles down to the south. But overall, it's not an egregious shift to the north, especially compared to the NAM. Right there. That's the most northern model we have at this current point. But ultimately, something to pay attention to, and just it gives you a lot to think about right here. Lastly, let's go ahead and show you the GFS run right here. GFS farthest to the south brings a lot of impacts to Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, Tennessee, the Carolinas, the Mid-Atlantic, New England especially. Potentially up to 2 feet of snow is possible for parts of the Appalachian regions right there, which will be interesting to see how that plays out. But another thing we need to look at is the freezing rain accumulation, because this is also going to be a very significant situation right here. Here's what we have for your freezing rain for parts of the south right here, taking a quick gander at this. My goodness, look at this. The GFS, I will say, I do think it's overdoing it quite a bit. Looking at almost 3 inches of ice right here, that is crazy to even consider right there for parts of Alabama. This is, regardless of, even if it's an inch of ice, this is crippling for Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, and the Carolinas right here. This is going to be a crippling snowstorm right here that we are going to need to take very seriously, even if it's just an inch of ice. And the fact that I'm saying just an inch of ice is kind of scary to me, honestly. So we'll have to keep a very close eye on that and kind of keep you updated on how the ice totals are going to come out. But ultimately, this is still panning out to be a very scary scenario right here for a lot of people in the Deep South, parts of the lower Midwest, and especially in the Mid-Atlantic, as you guys are now significantly in the line of fire. Going to the National Weather Service website, there are winter storm watches in effect from New Mexico all the way to central Tennessee right here. Those are going to be extended further to the east as more data comes out. Let's go ahead and show you what we got potentially for parts of Oklahoma. Let's go ahead and see where we can pull our latest snow accumulations for you guys right here. Let's see if we can find that right there. Okay, we have the weather story right here. They're giving us an idea of it. Here, let's go ahead and pull up the winter storm watch for Oklahoma City for you guys right here. Here's your winter storm watch. A snow accumulation of 6 or more inches are likely across parts of Oklahoma and North Texas right there. Matter of fact, I think Trevor has some of the maps pulled up. We can pull up right here. Yep, he's got some of them. So let's go ahead and show you some of them. I don't think we have any for Oklahoma City, but we have it for Fort Worth. We have it for Fort Worth, Tennessee, and Springfield, Missouri. We're gonna go ahead and shift Windows over here to Discord just to kind of show you this, to kind of pull these up right here. So this is your total snow accumulation for Fort Worth as of right now. Taking a quick look at this, the one before this was more conservative, but it's definitely ramped up the snow totals, especially along the Red River Valley right here, but still, you're going to want to pay attention to this right here. Ice accumulation is also going to be very concerning. Up to 1/3 of an inch of ice is possible for a lot of regions, especially south of Fort Worth. Let's go ahead and take a look at Shreveport. Shreveport, the totals are just maxed out right here, with potentially up to 8 inches of snow possible, according to the National Weather Service for parts of southwestern Oklahoma, although those totals could ramp up as more data continues to come in. In terms of your ice threat, my goodness, look at the ice threat right here. Over 1/2 an inch of ice is possible for a lot of these regions in southern Arkansas, eastern Texas, and much of Louisiana right here, at 2/3 of an inch of ice expected. Nashville, taking a look at this, well, up to 1 foot of snow is possible for a lot of these regions right there. And this is more leaning on the conservative side of things right here. We'll get more information as time continues to go on, but look at this. These are the initial NWS and estimates. Those typically tend to be a bit more conservative. Ice accumulation, at least for now, is not as bad, mainly because you're going to get more snow than ice, but we'll want to pay attention to that as well. And then here's what we got for you right here for Springfield, Missouri. This is what we're looking at right here. Kind of a bit of a wide range for right here. 1 to 5 inches in downtown Springfield, 2 to 6 for Joplin, 2 to 7 for Branson. It's a little bit all over the place because of the model uncertainty at this current point, but we will keep you updated on that. Ice accumulation, pretty much null and void right there, but I did want to go ahead and show you guys that. Shout out to Trevor, and shout out to Weather Kingdom and his server for letting me use that. But that is kind of the situation what we are seeing for you guys right there. I figured it would be good information to pull up for you guys. We also have winter weather advisories in effect for parts of Kentucky, Indiana, and Illinois over here in preparation for these snowstorms. You're going to want to take this very seriously if you're in the deep south. Even in the Louisiana and Arkansas, if you're not going to get snow, ice is going to be a significant threat to this, and that's something you need to keep an eye on. And on top of that, we're not just seeing snow this coming week. We're going to be seeing extreme cold as well. That high pressure system I was mentioning to you earlier is going to be bringing extreme cold across much of the eastern 2/3 of the United States. So after the snow system moves out of the U.S., you're going to see a pretty significant polar plunge across much of the U.S., and you even see it during the snow system as well, just diving further and further and further to the south across Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, the deep south, right there, across the entire Midwest, across the Mid-Atlantic. This is going to be a very cold week coming up, and weekend coming up for a lot of people. Looking at temperatures in the negatives for a lot of you guys right here. By Monday morning, we're looking at temperatures potentially as low as -10 in parts of the lower Midwest and Missouri and parts of southern Illinois. You're also looking, by the time we get to Tuesday, as that cold air starts navigating to the east, you'll start seeing a lot of the negatives go through the upper south and the mid-Atlantic, and especially in New England as well. And then then by Thursday, you have another big blast that the Europeans forecast, and that goes all the way down to Florida, bringing negative temperatures across much of the Midwest and upper South as well. So that's what we're looking at right there. And then as we get to the end of January, that will continue to persist, even going into February as well, that you're going to want to pay attention to right there. So that's another situation we're continuing to monitor as well. But right now, the big snow system is up front and center. That is a very serious situation that we're going to want to potentially bring up. And those are potentially going to bring catastrophic impacts from anywhere from New Mexico all the way to potentially Maine. This is a eerily similar setup to the 2021 Texas snowstorm, in my opinion, because of just the proximity of it, the high pressure system bringing extreme cold air down across much of the United States, as well as just where the placement of this is in lieu of the Gulf region, in lieu of the Gulf in particular. It's going to be bringing a ton of moisture to the from the Gulf to really bring a ton of snowfall for anywhere it really impacts. And because of those cold temperatures as well, you don't need particularly that much moisture to kind of close the gap right there. I mean, I've seen snowfall and the negatives before because of that, because the amount of moisture it took just was able to quickly close the gap. It's also reminding me of the 2025 Gulf Coast storm a little bit as well, similar setup to that. So we're kind of seeing a bit of a mixture between the two. at least in terms of synoptic setup. So this is stuff that we're going to want to watch out for, and this is stuff we're going to need to pay attention to, and we'll continue to keep you updated here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But with that being said, we are going to go ahead and close the video out right here. I really hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you are new. The goal, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather. I'd also like to shout out some people that I've talked to in Vivid Weather. Vivid Weather is a really good Discord server for weather if you want to ask questions, get more engaged with it. The link to their Discord server will be in the description down below. Also, feel free to join the Storms Unite Discord server. The link to that will be in the end screen. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.